Welcome everybody to your Node.js episode 4. This video we're going to talk about dependencies and Node Package Manager. Basically, I'm going to show you how to search for and install packages. Packages being software that other people have written that we can pull into our projects. I did want to say a special thank you to our sponsor, which is FileStack, an uploader for images and files that allow you to easily transform and deliver the files in your application. So if you need an application with uploading and delivering capabilities, FileStack has a CDN which will allow you to easily share your images and documents across the world. And you can see they have really cool transformation abilities for images. So it's a great shortcut if you need to work with images. Check it out, I'll drop a link below. So here we are back in our project. The easiest way to start with packages is just to go through an example. So let's go ahead and start with a clean slate here. We'll say NPM, which is Node Package Manager, install, and then whatever the package name is called. Let's go with UUID. This is a pretty simple package that will allow us to generate random identifiers. And it says added one package, found 0 vulnerabilities. When you go back to your package.json, in this case it asks if we want to reload it, and we will reload that, and now it says dependencies UUID is 9.0.0. And what this means is this is the version of the dependency that we want. So if they end up releasing a new version, we can specify exactly what we want. As software is continually developing and updating, there's not just going to be one version of a software, there will actually be multiple. But there's this important character here, this caret symbol, a capital 6, I guess you could say. And what this says is that we are okay with any version as long as it starts with a 9. So any minor version change is totally okay. So this is not a specific version, but rather a version range, anything 9 or greater without going to 10. So what that means is we're also going to have this other file, which is package lock.json, and this is going to say the exact version. So here you can see again our packages with what is acceptable, but the specific version we are using is 9.0.0. So let's go through that one more time. Package.json is going to say what range of possible versions are okay to be used, and then package-lock.json is what version is actually being used. This package lock file can be generated, so what that means is I can go in here and I can delete that file. And when you do this, you can regenerate what versions you have. So if we only had the package.json file, we could say, hey, let's go ahead and get all the exact versions by saying npm install. And that's going to go through the package.json and grab any of the dependencies. And you may need to do a refresh for that new package lock to show up. And you can see again, it generated the same version in this case. You'll also notice we now have this node modules folder. This is where the source code for these packages are actually stored. So this will be generated as well. So let's go through an example. Let's go ahead and delete the node modules. And you may or may not have the package lock.json. Let's go ahead and just delete it since it can be generated anyways. And let's say this is what you've been given from a friend. You have some project and this is all they give you. So we just have the package.json and then we have the source code. This might be what a friend gives you if you're working on a project together, or this might be from GitHub or some other website if you download a project. So the process to get everything, not only the exact versions, but also the source code, would just be to issue npm install as we shown earlier, but you can also just do npm I. This is going to then, you saw that bar for a second, actually re-download that code. And now we have the actual source code downloaded in our project. Because the source code can be retrieved, we don't have to include this in any version control system like Git. We'll talk about that in an upcoming episode here shortly. So the package lock.json, if you were going to share this project with other people, such as inside of version control or just sending it directly to somebody, it's recommended that you do include the package lock file. That way, if I'm working on the project and you are working on the project, we have the exact same versions of those dependencies. I don't have 9.0.0 and you have 9.0.1. There might have been some change in that minor change that could make our code a little bit different. And it might not work on your machine or my machine, even though we have the same code, because of that difference. So whenever you check this code into version control, it's recommended to include the package.json and the package lock.json. And we're actually going to go through the process of version control setup in probably the next video. So let's now talk about where the source code for these packages come from. How do we just type in some command in the terminal and then it just shows up in our project? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, all of the source code for these packages is stored in this package repository, npmjs.com. So we can go in here and search for whatever package we're looking at, such as UUID. And this is a description of that package we just installed. And you can see the code for this as well. And versions. So here are the different versions that have been created. Total weekly downloads, kind of insane. And you can also go to that repository in GitHub. So here is that repo if you want all the details for the code, or if you wanted to clone this and modify however you might want to do it, that is how you would do that. This is also where you can search things. So for example, if you wanted to work with time, you could just type in time. It'll show some pop-ups. You can just hit search to and see some more information, sorting by popularity or whatever it may be. One we're going to be using is Express. This is going to allow us to build our websites. And if you go in here, you can go into 31 dependencies. And here are some of the other packages that this package needs to work. So if we went over here and said npm install Express, it's going to actually install quite a bit of packages behind the scenes. So you can see it going through here and said added 57 packages. Now our dependencies have updated, so it just has Express. It doesn't list out all those other dependencies, but inside of our node modules, you can see the source code for a ton of different packages that this Express package depends on. So that is an introduction to getting packages and searching for packages. Now let's talk about how to actually use them real quick. And overall, it's pretty simple. We can go into our source code and we're going to require that code. So we will say const, and we'll just say UUID, and we'll say require, and inside of parentheses, we will put the name of the package, UUID. Now, there are things that we can access on UUID. However, this is an object, and we can actually destructure this object and grab something inside of it using curly braces. It's a little complicated if you're not familiar with JavaScript, but don't worry too much about it right now. We can grab the v4 property, giving it the UUID v4 name. So now you could execute code like this, console log, passing in UUID v4, and this is a function call. So this will give us the unique identifier. We can execute our code with npm run start, and we can see the unique identifier right there. All of the different packages we use are going to be used in a similar way. You might not have the object destructuring here, so it might just be a name, but overall it's going to be pretty similar. Now I wanted to show you another way you might see things, but pretty much what we have so far is going to get you pretty far, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you're familiar with React, you might have seen, instead of require, you see import. And that syntax is going to look like this. Import, and then inside of curly braces, we will take v4 as UUID v4 from UUID. This is the other syntax you might see. However, if we try to run this code, you're going to get an error. And it says cannot use import statement outside a module. Well, there's two real different types of importing. There is the common JS way, which is what we were just using, and then the ES6 way, which is what we're doing here. And this is not supported by default, so what you need to do is inside of package.json, you can add a property in here, which is type, and the value for this would be module. This should fix the problem, but I still believe the preferred way that we're going to be using is to use the common JS import. But let's just run this and see if we can get it to work. And you can see it works that way, just the same. So that is why if you are coming from React, you might see this, which is different than the way you'll often see it with Node.js. So let's go ahead and restore this back to what it was. right there. And we will remove type module from the package JSON. All right, and then finally, let's just run it to make sure everything is working for the next video, because we're going to be checking this code into source control. All right, seems to be good. One final note is, if you're following along with the series and you want to be sure to be using exactly the same code as me, you can be sure that your dependencies are set to exactly the same. So you could go in here and set a specific number to match the package lock JSON, and I will have this up in GitHub probably by the end of the next video. That way you don't have any code changes and everything should work exactly the same way. You could also clone this repo from GitHub as well. All right, so that's the intro to packages. I guess this took a little bit longer than I was expecting. Had a lot to cover that hopefully was helpful. Stay tuned for the next video and we'll get this up in version control. Peace out.